am joined by Bobby Steinbach, co-founder of MeanPug. In this conversation, we talk about his leadership journey and what it takes to build a differentiated agency in a crowded market. Let's get into the show. Welcome, Bobby.
Hey, Miki.
Hi, glad you can spend some time with us, and I will jump right into the question, as I mentioned before. So can you share a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what your company does?
For sure. So I'm Bobby, Bobby Steinbach. I'm one of the founding partners of MeanPug. We are a full service marketing agency for law firms. So that means we do everything from the ideation of brands to SEO, PPC, video production, social media, strategic consulting, all the way up through traditional media. So we're doing TV, radio, and billboard buys for firms where it makes sense. Really, we just want to be that one-stop shop for lawyers.
I have to ask the name. How did it come about?
I can give you the long story or the short story. The long story is I've always had kind of a connection to pugs in a weird way. And what I mean is my mom growing up had this pug, which was always, for whatever reason, always kind of came into my childhood, even though I never intersected with her childhood pug, obviously. But she had a pug growing up called Bagel One. Bagel One had a short tenure. I think he had some health issues and died relatively quickly. So they ended up getting another pug and named it Bagel Two, which the naming choice is amazing. And for whatever, like I said, if we always had stories about Bagel 2 growing up, how disgusting his breath was, how he'd put his head out the window, and like her dad would flick cigarettes out the window and they'd sometimes hit the pug in the head. Like there was just a lot of stories around the pug growing up. So when I got older, it was kind of natural that I got a pug named Tiki. She's now she's like 8 or 9. So I got Tiki. When Andrew and I were starting MeanPug in 2020, we were going through that, I think, cycle that anybody who started a company can relate to, where it's how can I find a name that is easy to spell, easy to say, short, memorable, and then most importantly, available, right? That's kind of the criteria set. And we were on maybe day 2 of this, something like that. And at this point, you really just want to get started. You want to work on building your website, your brand, kind of get your name out there and do all the things that will actually drive business. You don't want to keep thinking about a name. So we started looking for inspiration and found MailChimp. We really liked the branding of MailChimp. We liked how they were fun in kind of a space that we didn't think of as traditionally fun, email sending platforms. And we decided to borrow that concept of having an animal in our name. I, at some point, gravitated towards pug, as one does. And honestly, the mean part of it, I think that just came about because it was like, what's the last thing you think of when you think of a pug? And it was like mean. So MeanPug, that's where we landed. So when I tell people what our name is now, lawyers, we get one of 2 reactions. We either get that is brilliant, best name I've ever heard, or why would you ever name a company MeanPug in legal, where it's like people want to be, a lot of lawyers want to be very professional and like straight up the middle. But the one thing that everyone kind of can agree on is you don't forget it.
Yeah. I actually was going to say that, like, that's a good choice of name because it sticks to you.
Yeah, we didn't want to just be another Law X type of name in the space.
Yeah. That's great, though. I mean, good story, though.
That's the long version.
To ask.
You got to cut it down. You got to make it more interesting somehow.
Yeah. It's already interesting on its own. So, anyway, And what inspired you to start the company, and then or step it into your current role? Like, if you said that you started it, so it's not like you transitioned into this role. So
yeah. So, my history. First of all, I've been with my co-founder Andrew for about 13 years now. Prior to starting MeanPug, I was the director of engineering at the largest personal injury firm in the U.S., Morgan & Morgan. So I was there for 3.5 years building stuff on the marketing side.
Hmm.
Andrew, my co-founder, was the director of paid digital advertising there, managing hundreds of millions of dollars in digital spend. Before that, I was the first engineer at a ticketing startup in New York City. So think like StubHub, but at the startup level. And Andrew was the first paid digital guy there. So that's where we initially met, going back again like 12 years or so. Built a lot of stuff, ended up exiting again about 3 years into that. And that's when we moved over to Morgan. But it's all to say, like, we had that startup mentality going into Morgan and Morgan, which is a huge firm with thousands of employees. Um, so we saw a lot of opportunity and were able to drive a lot of growth and initiatives. But we also, I think, we're missing out on having that feeling of building something from the ground up and also helping firms and brands that don't necessarily have hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on building their brand do something more creative to drive growth. So ended up starting the agency kind of with that mindset and goal of how can we help firms compete at a high level without necessarily spending the dollars that huge firms can.
What are the most common pain points that you see from all these law firms?
We work with some of the biggest firms in states, but we also work with firms that have no brand and build them from the ground up. So very, very wide in practice area experience and very deep in terms of experience working with
Mhm.
firms, whatever life cycle they're in. Um, so everyone has a unique problem set. I'd
Mhm.
say, like the folks who are just getting started, the biggest problem set is, I guess the question is, are you saying what's the biggest issue that lawyers have to face when it comes to thinking about marketing? Because I think a lot of times that's getting out of their own way. And that's a little bit different than what's the biggest problem from a technical standpoint of marketing a firm in like a very competitive landscape. So there are two sides to that, I would say.
So how do you position yourself to help them, like, or how do you effectively help them in just two angles, or do you always attack it in two angles and explain that area?
I think the problem with a lot of marketing in the space is it's super templatized and cookie cutter, where it's you work with us and here's what we're going to do. You're going to get X amount of blog posts a month. You're going to get Y amount of social media posts. We're going to go through a checklist of technical items, and like that's kind of it. And the problem is that's not really how marketing works today. Like you need to fire across multiple cylinders. You shouldn't just statically make choices around where you're going to put time and effort without any sort of feedback cycle around looking at what's working, what isn't, where should we cut, where should we increase.
I
So
see.
in short, I think the biggest problem most firms make are they sign with a provider who is working off of a checklist.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a marketing firm, so we're a development agency. So we hire marketing agencies to do certain things where I collaborate with them. So we tried, but we had experience hiring marketing agencies that are exactly what you described, and
Well,
just
it's a brutal cycle, I think, because you're kind of a victim of your own success. When you're a very small agency, you have no process and everything is a fire and you're trying to do everything all at once, but you also get the benefit of working with typically the founders directly or like first employees who have a lot of oversight. So there is a plus and a minus to very small agencies. As you get bigger, you remember those problems that you had when you were very small. So you try and create protocols for everything, process for everything, which becomes checklists, which becomes people not thinking outside of the checklist, which becomes the problem that we're describing.
that's actually, yeah, that's exactly true. And then like you get assigned to someone that's like just adopting the checklist and doesn't necessarily understanding the history of the
Yes,
relationship or what has been gone through previously. So now it kind of goes to the weird cycle.
that's right.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, but but I mean, there are agencies like you, so can not do that and help the people. Yeah.
I think I honestly, I kind of when we're talking to new potential clients, I call it the Goldilocks zone. Like we are just the right size where we're big enough where we've got people in the right seats doing the work they should be doing, but we're small enough where me and Andrew have still hired every person in the company. There's not like a middle manager trying to interpret hiring requirements. We've been on the calls and we're still active in the accounts. So I don't think that works. Like when, talk to me in 3 years, 4 years, when we're twice the size, this structure won't work. The question is, can we find a structure where we still get these benefits? But at some point, I don't see how you avoid having checklists and people who, I guess, very good middle management is probably the only answer to that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's a scaling issue that everyone has to face.
Agree, 100%.
Yeah. What would you say the one skill that's absolutely essential for business owners, leaders, or agency owners?
Grit.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually part of our. So when we do our performance reviews, um, every role has a different set of KPIs that we measure. The most common KPI that we include as part of measurement is grit. It's just a one liner because I think it's something that's unteachable
Hmm.
and it can make up for a lot of shortcomings in everything else. You could be not as skilled, you could be not as, naturally gifted, but if you have grit, you can still perform at the highest level.
Yeah, that actually encapsulates a lot of different skills that you want as an employee or for the leader to
And it
have.
means that you will be teachable. It means that you're going to, I guess there are probably circumstances where people with grit are hard to teach and learn. They don't learn, but by having it, you are more likely to put in the time to learn the things that will make you end up being more skilled, more whatever. So it is, I just think, like the best raw ingredient in a person.
Yeah, well, very well said, and I agree completely. So this was actually a caveat question because we were just talking about it before we start the show about your podcast. I am very curious about your podcast. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Tell us more
Let
about that.
Happy to. So we have two podcasts. We have one podcast which is similar to this one. We bring on a guest, we interview them, and really try and suss out their history, why they became a lawyer, why they do what they do, what drives them. That's a lot of the conversation we have. We have another podcast we launched called Devil's Advocate. So Devil's Advocate, what we do is we bring on two guests, typically both lawyers. Doesn't have to be, but I like when it is. Um, and we ask them a series of controversial questions. I'll give you a really easy one because it's just, I think, easy to parse. Pineapple pizza is gross, or pineapple pizza is great, right? That could be a question. Okay, so each guest, ideally simultaneously, gives their answer yes, no. Most of these are yes, no questions. Let's say one guy says yes, the other guy says no. That triggers the game, and they are forced to take the side they don't believe in. So if you said pineapple pizza's amazing, now you have to argue why it's terrible. If you said pineapple pizza's terrible, now you have to argue why it's amazing. We give them a couple of minutes to make their points, and then we cut it off.
That sounds really interesting. I gotta watch this show.
It's very fun. I think here's the biggest problem is you have to have the right two people. Like we've experimented with, do you want real enemies? Do you want frenemies? Do you want people who are true friends? And so far, our best match has been frenemies,
Hmm.
where there's like a natural rivalry that
Yeah.
that has created, I think, some really good dynamics. But we haven't found enemies yet. I would really love to. I really do want to try this with like actual enemies.
Interesting. Hopefully
Uh-huh.
it doesn't go sideways though.
At least we're remote. Can't go
Yeah.
too sideways.
Oh, wait, that's true. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, like I was talking to you about our boozy browsing because we do have digital happy hours where we have a drink and then we audit the site or some debate about something technology related. And then I would love to have you as a guest there as
Yeah, no,
well.
I'd love to be on that. That's very my speed.
Yeah. So I'll invite you to that after. So where can people learn more about you or connect with your work?
Awesome. Yeah, so you can find us at meanpug.com. We've got a lot of good stuff up there, everything from guides to blog posts. We did a really cool color study maybe 7 or 8 months ago. I ended up writing So we have this internal tool we call God of Law. It's basically just a data feed that we built, which scrapes a bunch of sources. It scrapes gov sites, it scrapes other law firms, it scrapes a bunch of places. We digest it, we run it through some AI tooling, do some other stuff there too. But one thing that I was interested in is, can we answer the question, what what are the primary and secondary colors firms are using on their websites? Like, what is the primary makeup? So we ended up doing this color study, scraping about 10,000 firms' websites, identifying and categorizing primary color and secondary color, and then from there learned some pretty interesting things. Like, I think 70 or 80% of all firms have blue as their primary color. 0.2% of firms have purple as a primary color. So we found some interest. We ended up doing color combinations, what the most popular combinations were of colors. Anyways, long tangent. We have some good stuff up there. You can email us at bark@meanpug.com, or very exciting, we just got a vanity number. You can call us at 833 meanpug, MEANPUG.
Yeah, I'll include that in the show note. I'll grab the information again in case
Awesome.
I miss it, and we'll put that in. And thanks for your time. Anything before we depart? Anything you want to add?
No, this was great. Thanks for having me on, Miki.
All right, thanks for your time.